Okay, this is for part 1 of the density lab, just getting the volume of the pycnometer. I'm going to start up LibreOffice, and I'm going to go into the calc spreadsheet right here. And so, the first thing I might do is I might type in the mass of the pycnometer. Oops, yep, spell mass right, okay. And I might just put mass P just for short. This is just for me. I'm not going to put that notation in a formal report, but I'm the only one who's going to see this spreadsheet, so I'm just going to annotate. And I'll put in my values for my 3 trials. Just type them in. And now I realize, oh geez, I wish I would have a column here that would say trial. So I can left click and hold to highlight all those cells. And once I've done that, then I will left click and hold again somewhere in any of that block, and I can just slide them over. And then I will type trial. And this is trial 1, 2, and 3. The next thing I'm going to keep track of is the uncertainty on that. And I would type D mass P absolute. So what that means, I'm going to use my abbreviations. D means uncertainty, and the mass of the pycnometer, and that's the absolute uncertainty. And I'm going to type those in, and that's going to be 0.01 for each of those. And once I've done it once, I can always fill down, so I don't have to retype it. So just so you see how I did that, I clicked on it once, and I moved my cursor to the lower right corner, and it turns to this big plus. When I've done that, I left click and drag all the way down, and it would fill down for me. The next thing that I will do is I'm going to type in what was the mass of that pycnometer plus stopper, right? But plus the water. So I'm going to enter in all the values that I got. So I got this, 36.5 and 36.1. Same thing. I want to make sure that I keep track of my uncertainty. So I will type in this, P plus W, and make sure that it's absolute. You might notice that it kind of goes beyond the cell. So if I just move my cursor to this little tab right here and double click with my left mouse button, it automatically resizes it for me so that it fits all the stuff in the text in the cell. And I'll put in 0.01, and it's the same on all those. So I'll move my cursor to this thing and fill down. So, oops. Okay, so this might happen, and if that does happen, we can do this instead. I can do equals 0.01, and then if I fill down, it won't automatically add 1 to each cell. So that reminds me of another thing about using a spreadsheet. Make sure you look at what's going on. It's very easy to quickly type stuff in and think, oh, I can trust those numbers, but you want to make sure that you really know what's going on top of that. Okay, and then the last thing I'll put in here, then I want to do some calculations. I want to get, hey, what was the mass of just the water? Well, to figure out the mass of the water, it's going to be what was the pycnometer plus the water. I just want to subtract the mass of the empty pycnometer. So I'm going to type in the equal sign. I'm going to click on this value here, and when I do, it says it's D2. This is column D, row 2. That's what that means. I have to manually type in the subtraction key, and then I will click on this, the thing I'm trying to subtract from. And I hit enter, and it calculates, and I can do the fill down again, and it'll calculate all of them quickly for me. All right, I want to know what the uncertainty on this is, so I'll put D mass of the water, absolute. And this, since I did subtraction to get this value here, I have to add the absolute uncertainty. So this is just going to equal this cell. Type in a plus, and I'll click on that cell. Those are the 2 things that are going to be added. Let's make this a little bigger. And you know what? I can also fill that down. Now I know that that's all the same value, and if you wanted, you could just type in 0.02 each time, but you don't have to. This way it's actually a little better, because if I made a mistake here and I change it, it'll automatically change this number. So this is maybe a little more advantageous. All right, now I want to get what I have for the density of the water for the day, okay? And so I got density of water. I looked it up, and I got 0.99890. You might have a slightly different value. You notice it gets rid of the 0 for me. Right now I don't care about that. And I will just fill that down. Same thing. Notice it added a 1 each time, so I need to actually put equals that and fill it down instead. Now it won't automatically add a 1 when I fill down. Okay. And the uncertainty on the density, remember, we were going to act like that is 0%. So now I can finally get the volume of the water. And the volume of the water is going to equal the mass of the water divided by the density. So I'll just do equals. mass of water. I'll type in the divided key, and I'll divide it by the density, and we will fill that down. All right, and then if I want the uncertainty, I'm going to need the percentages here. Well, the percentage on the density was 0, so I'm not really worried about that. You're welcome to make a column if you want to sort of keep track of it, but I want to add a column right here to make sure that the mass of water is a percentage. Let me just make that a little bigger. Okay, so I want to move these things over to the side, and so I just clicked and dragged. Now I'll just left click anywhere inside here, and when I do, I can slide them over one, and it changes the cell references for me, and I'll put D mass water percent. Okay, that's going to equal my absolute uncertainty. I'm going to divide it by my actual value, and I will times it by 100 and fill that down. All right, so now I have the volume of the water. I need to get my uncertainty. Volume of the water, D volume of water percentage. That's going to pretty much be the same as this mass one, because remember I'm adding it plus the 0 on the density. So I'm just going to actually reference it to the cell and fill that down. So that percentage stays the same. And I don't know if I'm going to need this later or not, but I'm actually going to also get the uncertainty of the water in absolute, just in case I need it for part 2 or something. It just makes it a little bit nicer to have on hand. Otherwise, I got to go back and get it. Okay, so that's going to equal the percentage uncertainty divided by 100, and we're going to multiply it by the actual value here of the water. And so we'll do that, and I will fill that down. So now I have the volume for the 3 trials, and I need to really have an average here. So that was the last step. Hey, what is the average going to be? Because I'm going to eventually need to use that in part 2. So the nice thing here can be an average. So I'm actually going to type the word average. You don't need to do this, but I'm doing that just to sort of keep track of it. Oops, I need to move it over one. Come on. See if it lets me. Well, now I can move it over one. Okay. And here I want the average of all these 3 things. So I'm going to type equals. You have to type in the word average and an open parenthesis. And if I want the average of these 3 numbers, I can left click and drag to highlight them all and just hit enter. I don't even have to use the close parenthesis. And this is the average of these 3 values. And if I want, I can do a fill down, but instead of filling down, I'm filling to the right the same way. And I'm getting the average percent uncertainty. I'm getting the average absolute uncertainty. Now the nice thing here would be I can, if I were to actually make a mistake here, let's say this one really wasn't 26.3, let's say it was 28, everything updates for me, and I don't have to worry about redoing the whole thing. Okay, now let's go back to 26.3. I'll change back. So I believe that is all we need for part 1. And I will stop and create a different one for part 2.